by Lisa Stone. Read by Jilly Bond. Chapter 1. It was always worse when he'd had a beer or two. That feeling, hot, urgent and raw, tearing through him, making him restless, argumentative, angry. It was as though something or someone took control of him, forcing him to act badly, to be nasty and cruel. It happened when someone had a go at him, took the piss or said something he didn't like. The feeling was there at other times too, Shane had to admit, but it was worse when he'd had a drink. It didn't take much, just a few beers. He wasn't an alcoholic, but it lowered his guard enough to allow his anger to come to the surface. It was because of his childhood, Rosie said. They'd moved in together 4 months ago, and on the whole she was sympathetic. In some respects she was too understanding for her own good. She was a good person, and he liked her. Even told her he loved her when she asked. But why didn't she realise that the kinder and more understanding she became, the easier it was for him to overstep the mark? It almost incited him to do it. Yet she continued to be understanding despite what he did to her. Hitting her, making her scream, cry out and beg for mercy. Afterwards he knew that it wasn't the gentlemanly way to act. But when he was angry and out of control, he didn't care a fuck for the gentlemanly way. Anger, resentment, the feeling that he wasn't good enough, brewed together in an unwholesome concoction and made him act as he did. He sensed that others felt he was inferior to them, that he was uneducated, stupid, and fair game to laugh at. That was the worst feeling. That they were laughing at him, especially when it was someone he knew taking the piss. It made him so angry that he couldn't be held responsible for his actions. This had got him into trouble many times, and then recently he'd smashed a bottle and glassed his best mate, Kevin, which had put him in prison. They'd been drinking and telling jokes, and Kevin had told one which he hadn't immediately grasped. Kevin had laughed and called him a dickhead. The others had laughed too, which didn't help, but he expected more from Kevin, being his best mate. Then before he realised what he was doing, he'd smashed the top off a bottle and had ground it in Kevin's face. He looked at Rosie now, cowering in the corner of the bedroom, the one that was theirs since he'd moved in. Why she'd let him move in, he wasn't sure, but he was pleased she had. It was kind of her. But then Rosie was kind. He could admit that even now, when she got on his nerves and made him hit her. Had she been a horrible bitch, a slag, like his mother, he could have better justified hitting her. He'd gone to his mother's house first on his release from prison, but she hadn't wanted him. No surprise there, she'd never wanted him, not even as a baby. The shrink he'd seen in prison had said his mother could be part of his problem. His anger stemmed from her lack of nurturing and ultimate rejection of him. But it couldn't be helped. No one was perfect. Not his mother, or even Rosie, for all her kindness and forgiveness. The bedroom had been decorated in pale pink when he'd first moved in. "Yuck," he'd said to her when he'd first seen it. And she'd laughed. "Jesus," he'd exclaimed, as he'd looked at a collection of china dolls in period costumes, arranged on a small satin-covered chair. "Dolls in my bedroom? What do you take me for? A Nancy boy?" He'd told her the dolls would have to go, but she hadn't understood to begin with, because they were still there for another 2 days. Then he got angry that she hadn't done as he'd told her, and he'd thrown the dolls and the chair across the room. He might even have thrown Rosie, but he wasn't sure. He'd been in a really bad temper at the time. "What normal